All right, I'm going to give you a freebie today. I want to remind you of something that's, I think is very important to note that I think we've forgotten about. But I want to look at this a little bit different way, but I'm going to go through this very quickly. You remember there's four evolutions of religion, and they're tied directly to civilization. Remember what they are? Animism. Animism. In animism, what's the chief concern of the people? Basically placating spirits. Spirits are in everything. Spirits are what make, the water flow. Spirits make gravity go, although there's no idea what gravity is. Spirits are what make fire and plants grow and everything happen. The second step is, remember, paganism, but it's called pantheonic paganism. Pantheonic paganism, and what's your biggest concern? You want to placate the gods. And what's really important about this, everybody starts as animus. Everybody starts as animus. They move to pantheonic paganism usually when they develop civilization, when they develop literacy. So the way you get to pantheonic paganism is when you develop literacy and you begin to develop civilization skills. Usually you come into, go from hunter-gatherers to markets and to farming and things like that. But, you got to placate the gods. The next step is Mysterion. Mysterion, what do you want to do in Mysterion? What's the most important thing in Mysterion?
Knowing the mystery.
Knowing the mystery, but what does that mean the focus is? The focus isn't the mystery, the focus is the people or individual. Because in the Mysterion, the point is, who can be in a Mysterion? Everybody, right? Remember, the Christians look, the Teen Hodos look just like a Mysterion, because Paul said there's neither free nor slave, man or woman, right? Jew or Greek. In a Mysterion, the people are individual. Individual is probably I think maybe individual is probably the most important thing, because the point is, it's no longer it is a collective worship, because Catholicism basically gave us a collective salvation, right? For years and years until evangelical thought, but that's a whole other idea. But the most important focus is on individual, and the individual is as a member, right? Where this you're placating gods, now you're placating spirits. What's the last one? This is probably the most important because we're here. Gnosticism. Gnostic. In Gnosticism, what's the focus of Gnosticism? Science. Knowledge. But that's not what you're placating. But let's put this in here. Knowledge. What do you placate in Gnosticism? Matter of fact, if you think, okay, what are the most Gnostic governments that there have ever been in history? Communism, socialism, yes. Because in communism, socialism, there is no God. So what are you placating in Gnosticism?
Your state.
Huh?
State.
The state. That's why I said people would be better here. It's the people or state. And the reason I want to bring this up is because we're talking about Mysterion ideas. Mysterion is a great change. But the reason I want to bring up this Gnosticism is because in Gnosticism, for example, Look at the things that have been taken over by the government that the church used to do with gladness, that was the purpose of the church. For example, charity, taking care of people, hospitals, schools, right?
Orphanages.
In Gnosticism, who's your God? The state. So I wanted to bring this up because, for number one, this is not theology or doctrine at all. This is just the way the world is, guys. So people are now worshiping the state. That's where all their income comes from. That's where all their living comes from. That's where all their succors and support and everything come from. And so if we continue, you're going to see Gnosticism. There's no preacher that I've ever seen preaching against the state and what it does in charities or operations, but yet those charities and operations rob from the people to give to other people, which I think is going to be punished severely by God. Because I believe in a God like, I believe in the Old Testament, New Testament God. Okay, and that is a statement of theology. So there, right? But I'm just saying, I think you have a serious problem in a Gnostic society, because the government is who runs the schools. The government runs the universities. The government takes your taxes, charity, thank you, and gives it to those who may or may not deserve it. So, just saying. The thing is that we are moving, as a fact, in the Mysterions, and unfortunately Christianity brought about Gnosticism. So it's important to note Gnosticism. Christian Gnosticism is what caused Gnosticism in general. But Gnosticism comes with what? What idea, what thing brings Gnosticism? What concept brings Gnosticism? If literacy brings paganism, and what brings Mysterion? Mysterion comes from philosophy, and Dave said it, science. Science usually brings Gnosticism, the desire for knowledge and the idea that knowledge is all there is, which is why they teach in the schools the scientific method and not historical legal method. So someone asked about this, and I haven't talked about Mysterion for a long time because, well, I haven't talked about it, but we need to talk about it because everything in the New Testament has to be viewed from a view of the Mysterion, period, dot. And we are going to get to 14 today. We will get to 14 today. And when we get to 14 is all about the very end. It's sometimes called the preparation in Mark. I don't like that because I don't think that's where we really are. But remember, in Mark, the whole question in Mark is, who is Jesus? Who is this guy? And the answers we've gotten, he doesn't ever call himself the Son of Man. That's an implied telos. But there's this Son of Man, and then and you notice in the Psalm today, I don't think that was a good translation, but I thought it was funny, it called Son of Man. Don't trust in the Son of Man. So which Son of Man do you want? Anyway, Son of Man, you've also got the Son of David, and, he basically, and then you have the Christus, right? The Christus. So the question of Mark is, who is this Jesus? And I want to remind you, we've had these beautiful logos to telos. And remember, the chief logo, the main logos to telos we had from the point, Mark proves, I think, to a Greek standpoint, from a Greek standpoint, Mark proves beyond a shadow of doubt that Jesus is a God, Pick which God, but he is a God, right? That's Mark's point. He's a God. And then we see, and actually he is the God of gods. He's above all gods. So our assumption, of course, like the Hebrews, is Mark is talking about Jehovah. So Jesus is Jehovah, is the God. And then what we get is this beautiful sequence after the question. The question comes about around 8. That's the question where Jesus says, "Who do you say I am?" And Simon Peter gets the wrong answer. But it's the right answer from Mark's standpoint, because Mark wanted to bring up this whole point about Christus and the Son of Man and everything else. So the Greek readers say, well, he's God. And Simon Peter says, well, you're the Christus. Very interesting, because that changes the whole complexion of the text. So the question from then on in Mark is what? What is the main question in the whole? What's the logos in the rest of Mark that we're looking at? Who is in
Kingdom.
the kingdom? Who is in the kingdom? Because the whole point is, where do you want to go when you're croaked? The Hebrew viewpoint, where do you go in the Hebrew Orthodox viewpoint?
Jerusalem. It's the end.
Yeah, it's the end. There's nothing. Later Hebrew, where are you going? In later Hebrew, in the Pharisaic view, where's the Pharisees say you go? Gehenna. Well, as if okay, nothingness is a pretty bad concept, but going to Gehenna, that's even worse. I mean, that's H-E double toothpicks, right? Gehenna is not a very positive place either. Now, apocryphal. Oh, we don't study Apocrypha. Luckily, we had a class in Apocrypha, so you guys know the Apocrypha. But in the Apocrypha, where do you end up going? To the Oranos, with God, right? And the Pharisees' view, the Pharisaic view from the Apocryphal age is that you're going to be with God. Well, this is kind of positive. Maybe you go to Gehenna, but you get to be with God eventually. Now, what's the Greek viewpoint? Where does the Greek say you go? Old Greek, classic Greek. Classic Greek, everybody goes to Hades. Okay? New classic Greek, if you're good, you go to the Elysian fields. Ooh, this is a positive, right? But you know what? You got to work your way. And remember Pythagoras? Remember the guy who was pushing the boulder up the hill? When is he going to get to the Elysian fields?
Never.
Never! Oh, never! You know? So what a horrible thing, right? You could go to Hades and hoping for the Elysian fields and get stuck like Pythagoras pushing a boulder up the hill that always falls. Or, see, we stopped studying Greek, and this has been a horrific thing for our society. Because we stopped studying Greek, we forget the Greek myths are full of wonderful paradoxes. For example, one of the great paradoxes in Greek mythology, one of the greatest paradoxes, was there was supposedly Telemeos, a fox creature that was created by one of the gods to punish, I believe, the Thebans. And so Telemeos was a fox, an uncapturable fox. Zeus made a dog who could capture anything, could catch any animal, anything, and set it to capture the fox because the Thebans tried to him. So guess what we have? In the stars, there is, we call them Canis Major and Canis Minor, but that is supposed to be the Telemeos fox and the great dog that Zeus made, continually chasing each other forever in eternity. But Greek mythos is full of these wonderful, beautiful paradoxes. This is what they train their children in. Just like the Aesop's fables, without a moral, right? You're supposed to figure out the telos. These are... What's the telos of, for example, the Telemeos fox and the dog that can find anything? Can you just venture a guess? What is the telos of that?
It's always striving, but no.
And what would you call that? If you gave it a single word. How about faith? Faith. Yes, sir.
Going back a little bit, is the reason that the early Israelites were so susceptible to multiple gods is because Yahweh, or the God, couldn't promise them eternal life at that point?
Ooh, that's an interesting question. I don't think that's what it is. Although that's an interesting question. I think when you go back, we from our viewpoint like to look at, and I think it's wrong to do this. I really do think it's wrong to do this. We like to look at the world because they don't believe in a singular God, Jehovah. We like to look at the world as immature, stupid, uneducated, unadvanced. So we look at the Greeks and say, you're stupid and unadvanced, right? And we like to look at the Hebrews like, oh, they're like little children. But they're not. These are fully cogent cultures and societies that are working with the best knowledge they have, right? And so their knowledge is stuck in animism or paganism. When when what's his name started, was there any literature that when what's his name Jacob, when Jacob came out of the Ur of the Chaldees, not Jacob, who's the father of Israel? Abraham. When Abraham came out, Abram came out of the Ur of the Chaldees, did he have literacy?
No.
Probably not. No literacy.
There were tablets they found. Actually.
In Elba, yeah, but that's pushing the edge. They probably did not have any literacy or written. He definitely did not. So where is he?
He's an animism.
He's in animism, and just beginning to move toward pantheonic paganism because literature is being invented. Not near the Chaldees, though. That's pretty far out, right? But they're starting to get inklings of literary type things. So you start seeing the individual gods of stuff, right? Of things. No money, no. So he's an animist. And so why are they so susceptible? Because of the culture and where they are in life. If you look at all this, why are Christian churches full of Gnostics? We live in a Gnostic era. If you want to be anything else, and Christianity is not Gnosticism, it's not Mysterian, it's not paganism, it's not animism. Hebrew is not either. So if you want to be something different, what do you got to be? Different. You got to kick the status quo out. Yes, ma'am.
Well, but however, Abraham had a marvelous benefit of direct communication with God. And God obviously spoke to him first. I don't know that Abraham sought God. I think God sought Abraham. But always there was the promise of the promised land. And in Hebrews, we understand that although it was a geographical place, that wasn't all of it, because they were always searching for something, and they understood that it was a place with God where we would have rest from life, from our labors.
I don't disagree with that, and I think that's a very nice, a very good observation. But let me give you a little. Let me put a wrench on it, okay? Let's say I'm God, and let's say you're Abraham. You're Abram, and I speak to you, and I say, hey, I want you to go to this place, and I promise you. And you go, nah, you're out of it. I have my other gods. It's cool. So I go to you. I say, hey, I'm God. I'd like you to go. Tammy, you. I go to everybody, and finally I get to Abram. And one guy, I say, hey, Abram. And I don't tell you, I've talked to a gazillion other people, right? But what are you convinced?
Okay,
right?
I'm convinced that this is the true God, and I'm going to follow it.
And you do something about it, right?
Yes.
Now, we know that Abram did not give up his other gods. He did not. If you read it, go back and read it and see what he was following. Jehovah was his God, and he had bound himself to Jehovah with a covenant. But his wives were carrying idols, and they were idols of the household. Just saying. Yes, sir.
A couple things. I want to roll the tape back a minute. I want you to get near that pool that you don't step in.
Okay.
Hades and Gehenna, the same?
No, not necessarily. Culturally, not necessarily, but we make them the same, but yeah, not necessarily.
Okay, second question. In the Creed, we profess that Jesus descended into hell.
Yes.
So is that Gehenna or is that Hades? And is the reason that it is in the Creed is to fulfill the Hebrew belief and then to go to the next step?
I'll do the first one because that's the easiest. It's very interesting. Every religion in the world has a view of hell what they call hell, and heaven. Every religion. Now, I think that's pretty interesting, isn't it? I mean, if there was one that had it, like let's say Hebrews had it, and then, well, Hebrews didn't originally have it. Ooh. But then they built it up, basically with the Greeks, to a degree. Greeks and also late viewpoint. That's kind of interesting, isn't it? That they had none, but then they had a view. Huh. That kind of puts them outside the realm of the normal dudes. But every religion, Hinduism, Mohammedanism, Buddhism, Taoism kind of ish. There has to be hell in Taoism because there's a heaven. Shintoism, Shinto kind of changed, but Shinto kind of was off. But that's weird. Everybody has a view of hell or a place of continual damnation and a place of continual delight. Now, what's interesting, Eastern religions never got the idea that you could get from one to the other per se. Usually you're fated. Most of them are stuck in animism or pantheonic paganism, kind of tough. The other thing about, Jesus going down into hell and then coming back up, that is a huge theological question because it's unprovable. It's not a provable thing that Jesus went to hell and came back, for example. I can't prove that, right? And all I have is the witness of the text and the witness of the idea. And the idea is that Jesus conquered hell. But you have another problem too, because who is the current ruler of this world? Who rules gay according to the New Testament? Satan. So where are we? We're in hell. Just saying. So you can look at this in a lot of ways if you want to talk about theology. And I'm not going to yak into theology. I just mentioned theologically. Historical theology. People have viewed earth, gay, as part of hell. Because Satan happens to be here too, right? And also that salvation from gay means salvation from hell. Not to say that, it'll continue on, but yet, Satan's realm is here and Satan's realm is Hades or Gehenna or hell or however you want. And by the way, Jesus talks more about hell than anybody else. Okay,
again, we're talking about a creed, but Jesus lived 33 years in gay. Why do we profess that he descended into hell?
Because, in that, I would say...
I mean, was it, if what you're saying is so, wasn't he here the whole time?
That's the point. It could be, again, we're talking about paradox. And I think the beautiful paradox, Jesus is telling them, we're on the temple, we're on the Mount of Olives, and Jesus is talking about the temple. And we are getting, I hope we're getting a realization that what Jesus is doing is he's reviewing for them what has happened or will very soon happen, right? Where we want to see, well, to us, what is the most momentous thing in the world? To us, generally, in the evangelical sphere. No, I don't think so. Especially in our Gnostic church view, in our modern church view. What is everybody looking forward to?
Second coming.
The second coming. I'm saying there are whole groups and whole people that could care less about Jesus, but they're looking for the second coming of Jesus, right? But Jesus himself right now doesn't matter, see? But yet what you said is correct, because, for example, we had it in Ephesians today listen to the New Testament reading from the New Testament letters today. It says, at the peak epoch of the age, in English, right, Jesus came. So what you said is correct. I agree 100% with that. I think that's what Jesus and Mark and everything is teaching, that Jesus' death and resurrection is the peak of everything in the world, right? But what I'm telling you is a Gnostic view in the churches says what? The best is yet to come, right? The best didn't happen.
But last week maybe I drew the wrong conclusion, but last week we talked about the fact that Christ being here
Mhm.
was the second coming. I mean, he was,
No,
the event that we say that he's coming back, the fact that he came to earth united heaven and earth at that time.
Right, I'm not saying that isn't the second coming, or there may not be a second coming. I mean, we'd have to look in other books. What I'm saying is that Mark's whole point is that Jesus is here, that heaven and earth are together, and therefore, what are you looking for? Why are you looking for other Christs? Why are you looking for other stuff? We'll see that in the text. But I know there is very difficult to get a conclusive answer anywhere, right? Because these are difficult things. But let's look at this and finish this some more. I want to put these words, this is O-I-D-E-N. It's ideo, is the form, it means to look or see, specifically to see. A-G-R-U-P-N-E-I-P-E, agropinete, and it's agropeno. Agropeno, it means to, it's translated to keep watch, but it is A and sleep. A means not asleep. That's what it means, not asleep. A grupene, something like that. And here is an analog to this, G-R-E-G-O-R-E. Gregor, let's see, Gregor Uo, Egorio. This word comes from Egerio. What's Egerio?
Marketplace?
Huh?
The marketplace?
Agora, but what does Egerio mean specifically? Yeah, to rise up, to resurrect. Egerio is one of those words. Egerio ek nekros. Egerio, from the dead. Egerio ek nekros means to rise from the dead. Egerio is this word, and it means to not sleep, be awake, be wakeful, wake. And by the way, look, this and this, okay, this is be awake, this is not asleep. Okay? Wake, see, so that's the form. You throw in the negative on it, and it's there. And then this word, we've seen this before, but I had to give it to you. A-T-O. Intelleto, intellos. Intellos, right? E-N, E-N meaning at. Let's say at or on. And telos. So a set telos, a fixed telos, at telos. Aha! So in other words, these are the words we've got at the end. And let's go to where we were looking at before, and 31. I want to go back to 30 very quickly. 30 says, I tell you the truth, this generation will certainly not pass away until all these things, P-A-S, all these things have come to pass. And in 31, heaven and earth, gay, will come together, not pass away. It's parachromai. That's word of the day, last week. Will come together, but my logos, my words, my logos, will never not pass away. Basically, if it's all together, that means the words are what? Always there, right? So in other words, Jesus is saying that heaven and earth have already come together. Now this is very interesting theologically, because if Satan is the ruler of the gay, but the gay has come together, that means we are in active warfare now, right? Because before Satan had a free reign on the earth, and God sent his representatives. Now if heaven and earth are together, I mean, the world has changed pretty radically. It's kind of interesting. There's a whole lot of stuff you can get from this. It's like we ignore it, right? But there's wonderful things in here. And I noted in, I think, Isaiah 40, I'll read the whole thing, but I'll start with 1 to 8 or so, 1 to 9. says, comfort, comfort my people, says your God. Speak tenderly to Jerusalem. Proclaim to her that her hard service has been completed, that her sin has been paid for, that she has received from the Lord's hand double for all her sins. A voice of one calling in the desert, prepare the way for the Lord, make straight in the wilderness a highway for our God. Every valley shall be raised up, every mountain and hill made low. The rough ground shall become level, the rugged places a plain. And the glory of the Lord will be revealed, and all mankind together will see it. For the mouth of the Lord has spoken. A voice says, cry out. And I say, what shall I cry? All men are like grass, and all their glory is like the flowers of the field. Where have we heard this before in Mark? I mean, this is like reading Mark all over again in synopsis, right? 7, the grass withers, the flowers fall, because the breath of the Lord blows on them, surely. And by the way, what's the breath of the Lord? Hagios pneuma, right? Blows on them. Surely the people are grass. The grass withers and the flowers fall. But the word of our God stands forever. What did Jesus call himself? He just said, I am God. Because he said, heaven and earth will come together, but my logos will never go away. He just said he's God, according to Isaiah. 9, you bring good tidings to Zion, go up on a high mountain. You who bring good tidings to Jerusalem, lift up your voice with a shout, lift it up. Do not be afraid, say to the sounds of Judah, here is your God. I guess I have to read more of this. See, the sovereign Lord comes with power. His arm rules for him. See, his reward is with him, and his recompense accompanies him. He tends his flock like a shepherd. He gathers his lambs in his arms and carries them close to his heart. He gently leads those that have young. Who has measured the waters in the hollow of his hand, or with the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens? Isn't that interesting? With the breadth of his hand marked off the heavens, because now the heavens include the earth. Who has held the dust of the earth in a basket, or weighed the mountains on the scales and the hills in a balance? Who has understood the mind of the Lord, or instructed him as his counselor? Oh, it's just beautiful stuff here. I want to remind you, okay, we're looking, who is in the kingdom? That's the whole thing. And the question about the kingdom is stuff. If you have stuff, can you be in the kingdom? Nope. And the stuff, the talk is about money. Actually, not just about money, but all kinds of stuff. But money is a stand-in for that. And then the question comes about authority, right? And now we're talking about basically the same thing. And the last thing we had before this chapter, which is all about the telos. What is the telos, right? And he told him, I'm going to tell you the telos. The last thing we had before this chapter was the widow's lepton, which wasn't copper, although they transferred, for some reason they transferred copper, it might have been iron, but the lepton, so it's all about money. And now we're getting into the thing, and even the poor widow, luckily she gave up her money, but too bad for a temple that would be destroyed. 32. This is very interesting. No one ideo. No one sees. Not knows. This is not, I'm not going to argue that this can't be viewed in a very English fashion. You know, when we say no one sees, that can also mean euphemistically no one knows. But what do you think the Greek speaker thinks about this? No one sees about that day or hour. Not even, and by the way, the angels in heaven isn't necessarily there, nor the Son, but only the Father. This is a humorous statement. Why is this a humorous statement?
Because the Godhead is inseparable. If one knows, they all know.
That's part of it, but there's another piece in this. The word Jesus uses see. What did he just talk about? Just like, look back about 3 or 4 verses, and he talked about the fulfillment of the what tree? The fig tree. The fig tree. And Jesus says, when you see ideo, the fig tree, in blossom, you will know it is the time. What did he just tell him?
The time when it's going to happen.
This is like a slam. This is like a slam down joke. And the Greeks reading this are like, you know, to us, we look at it like, No one knows about the day or hour, not even the angels or the Son. Right? That's where we look at this. The Greeks are looking at it like this. He used the word, he did not use naos, he didn't gnostic, knowledge. He didn't use the word knowledge, no. He used the word ideo. And he just said, when you see the fig tree, when you ideo the fig tree in bloom, you will know it is time for these things to happen, right? So guess what he's telling them?
Happening now.
It's happening, and guess who knows? Everybody knows. Do you see this? This is why, we get all wrapped up in theology, doctrine, ideas, the second coming. But it's in the generation. And not only that, this is like a joke. You see, he's trying to get his disciples to get it. He's trying, in an English world, okay, back before the turn of the 20th century, he would probably put a dunce cap on them and spank them, right? And basically the Greeks did do that. The Greeks beat their students, right? But usually you didn't beat older students. You assumed that they were educated enough that you didn't have to beat knowledge into them anymore. So what is Jesus trying to do? He's trying to use every tool he has to get these guys to get the clue. And what is the strongest tool that the Greeks have? Paradox, sarcasm, we would call it humor, right? In a certain degree. He isn't doing a stand-up comedy routine, but to some degree he's trying to get them to get it, right? When we translate this, our translators are very careful to make sure we don't get it. Because they translate the word knowledge when it should be see. They don't draw the conclusions that are obvious in the text. But in any case, and a lot of times we're not getting. Look what it says, 33. It doesn't say be on guard. It says worship God. It says proskeomai. And that was one of the words of the day I had last, which means basically to worship God through prayer or pray to God. Agupeo. Be sleepless. Alert. The reason he used the word be sleepless, because what are we going to see very soon? Anybody read ahead? What happens in the Mount of Olives with the disciples? They fall asleep. So why do you think Mark and Jesus here are using the words be sleepless? He doesn't use the words be alert. Be alert means, I'm not sleeping, I'm alert, right? But the word in Greek is be sleepless. There's a reason why Jesus used these words, but that's my personal opinion. Don't you know when the occasion, not the time, the occasion. Isn't it interesting? There's a huge difference between time and occasion. Time means what? Eons and era, right? But occasion means an event's going to happen, right? You just tell them, be sleepless. You don't know when that time, and you literally don't know exactly when Jesus is going to be taken. But he's telling them to be awake for that. It's a foreshadowing. It's a foreshadowing of events that are just going to happen, right? This isn't. All right, it's enough of that. Anyway, 34. It's like a man going away. He leaves. Here's a parable. It doesn't say it's a parable, so it can't be a parable. So it's okay. But it's like a man going away. He leaves his house and puts his servants in charge, each with his assigned task. And in tolemai, he gives them a stated telos. The one at the door, it's not the one at the door, it's the thuros. It's the gate warden. It's basically the guy awake at the gate, okay? In a pure Greek thing. It's the guy, the thuros, the guy awake at the gate. To keep grogeo, to keep awake. Not to keep watch, to keep awake. Our translators are not helping us. They take away these beautiful words that imply a foreshadowing. In English, you guys know what a foreshadowing is, right? In great literature, in all great literature, every great author foreshadows all the events in the writing. That's part of great English writing. Guess what Greeks do? They do the same thing. This is what we call complex writing. So this is why you get your college professors and they're reading a translated version of the New Testament and they go, New Testament's a piece of, it's not worth reading. It's just bad literature, it's not good Greek. This is beautiful Greek. This is some of the most powerful Greek and most elegant Greek, especially written from a foreign country, that you're going to find. Beautiful stuff. And by the way, isn't Mark such a simple book? Such an easy, simple book. 35. Therefore, keep watch. Not keep watch. Stay awake. Because you do not know when the owner of the house will come back, whether in the evening or at midnight or when the rooster crows at dawn. What is this a foreshadowing of? Peter. You know, and guess who he's talking to? And when he says this, can you see Jesus? Peter's sitting right there and he goes, and when the rooster crows at dawn. Right? And Peter's going, why are you looking at me that way, God? Oh, what are you doing? Right? You know? I don't. 36. If he comes suddenly, do not let him find you sleeping. All right, we've already had sleeping like for 5 verses here. I mean, I know our translator messed it up for us, but it's all about staying awake and not be sleeping. It doesn't mean you're not supposed to be sleeping when you're supposed to be sleeping. It means the disciples are not supposed to be sleeping when they're supposed to be awake. But that's okay. 37. What I say to you, I say to everyone. And it's not watch. It's stay awake. Stay awake. I don't know. Okay. That's the end of chapter 13. And, you know, we do get a very good break because there is a natural break. It's not a break in the logos to telos, but it's a natural break in the sequence of the scenes, if you like, in English. Yeah.
I'm just thinking, we all know the end of the story. They didn't stay awake.
Right.
What would have been different if they had? He's telling them to stay awake.
What would be the difference if they had? I write about this in my books all the time, that, you know, when you have a compatriot with you, you have someone that is supposed to be helping and supporting you, someone that's supposed to know your mind, someone that's supposed to be there for you, and they're not. They're not doing what they should do, right? And when you read it in a book, or when it happens, it doesn't. In real life, it happens, but we usually don't note it. You know, in a book, you note it because the author shows you these things, right? And in the book, you're reading it and you're so disappointed, right? And maybe the protagonist is disappointed in the person that's supposed to be supporting them and helping them. In the Greek, this is literature. So when the Greeks read this, they knew that what? The disciples, Jesus was he happy with them? No. He's eternally disappointed with them. And so the message isn't for the disciples anymore. The message is for the readers. And so Mark is telling the readers, how do you make Jesus happy? Not by staying awake in a rave all night, right? But rather, look at the Greek worldview. Sarx, psuche, pneuma. So in the Greek worldview, you never stop psuche. As a matter of fact, when you're sleeping, you're always psucheing. Because why? How do we know?
Dreams.
You have dreams. Right. You have dreams. And the dreams don't necessarily fade away when you wake up, as our psalmist probably mistranslated said, but rather our dreams many times become reality. We either make them reality or we do something with them, right? And so in the Greek worldview, the psuche, the concept of thinking eternally, always thinking, that is the message of Christ, right? When you're awake, you're coherently and cognitively thinking. It's not, your dreams controlling you. It's not fate controlling you. It's not something else controlling you. You are in control, right? And that's the message of Mark. That's the message of Paul. That's the message of Christ. That's, I believe, the message of God, right? That's theological, but I'll say that. If we prove Jesus is God, and Jesus' message in Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John is to use your psuche. Think about it, right? Which is completely different than the view of the Greeks, which is fate, right? If you're telenos, if you are the fox fated to never be captured, you're never going to be captured. If you're the dog that's fated to always capture, guess what? You're going to chase the fox not fated to ever be captured, or that is fated never to be captured forever, right? You can't get away from it. But Paul and Jesus and all these guys tell you what? You can. It's because you're pistis, you are convinced, and because of who this guy is, right? But that's also the question: who's the son of man? Who's the son of David? Who's Christus? So let's go on to 14. This, in many, if you haven't noticed, if you go look at your outlines for your Bibles, almost every outline takes all this to be a Roman type document or an English type document. So what they do is they break it into scenes. They do not care about the logos to tell us. They completely ignore it. But look at the logos to tell us that we have. 1:14. Now the Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread were only 2 days away, and the chief priests and the teachers of the law, the grammateos, were zeto. They sought for some sly way, literally adolos, a decoy, to kreteo, to retain Jesus and kill him. So, before, remember, we had him confounding them, and now we're approaching the Feast of Unleavened Bread. So this is the end, and that's why I gave you the chart that shows where Bethany is, and the chart to show where the temple, and actually the fortress of Anatolia is probably a little closer to the temple. That's okay. But this shows some of the areas in Jerusalem. I thought it'd be kind of cool to have. But look what they say, too. But not during the Huerta, the holy day. It's not feast. Not during the holy day, Huerta. It's interesting that... Isn't it interesting that our translators decided to translate holy day in Greek to feast? Because that's true in a Greek standpoint, but I didn't think our translators were Greek. You know what I'm saying? Ancient Greek. But that's interesting, they didn't call holy day. They, Lagos, or the people, the Laos, the people in general, may thurvos. They may cause a disturbance. So they wanted to find a way to, and this, by the way, is not a new logos to tell us. Remember what the last whole chapter was about. The last whole chapter was about this. The ark stone, the center of the ark stone being removed, and guess what happens? The temple falls, and all these things are going to happen before the generation is out. Guess what? This is the telos of that whole chapter right here. Because remember what Jesus told him? The Son of Man will be taken by the scribes and the Pharisees, and he will be killed, and he will rise again. Now notice, this is an unstated telos that has to be obvious to everyone. Obvious to the most casual observer, as many of my engineering teachers used to say about some math equations we used to do, right? It's obvious, it is obvious, because Jesus told them that the Christus, he never said he was the Christus, right? But he said the Christus must be taken by the chief priests and the scribes, right? And be killed in Jerusalem, right? And then raised from the dead. And the whole chapter before was, as he's leaving the temple, one of the disciples said, "Look, teacher, what massive stones, what magnificent buildings." So the destruction of the temple, which represents Jesus and the Christus, and then the first thing we get in chapter 14, which, right, remember the chapters are added, is now they're looking for a way to kill and capture and kill Jesus. In other words, Mark just told you that Jesus Christ is who? Jesus Christ is the Christus, and Jesus Christ is the Son of Man. He just told you that. It's like, it's an unstated telos still, but it's an obvious telos from the logos to telos. 3. While he was in Bethany, there it is, that's why I got Bethany, reclining at the table, literally, katechemi, reclined to eat, in the home of a man known as Simon the leper. So not only did he know Lazarus and Mary and Martha in Bethany, he also knew a guy named Simon the leper.
Was he really a leper?
He might have been a leper in the past. Doesn't tell us, yeah. He could still be a leper. But I would guess that he was probably an upstanding guy in the community, and Jesus maybe healed him. I'm making a guess here, but and so he was continued to be called Simon the leper, probably because the Pharisees and rabbis didn't acknowledge him, you know. And I don't know if to be acknowledged as not being a leper. And okay, even if you did, let's say you were a leper, and then you brought the sacrifices to the temple and had the temple, the priests say that you're no longer a leper. I suspect that if you had leprosy long enough, it would stick like glue. I mean, you would never be not Simon the leper. I mean, poor guy, but that's the way the world is, right? This is matter of fact, Jesus says this is the most beautiful and important part of Mark. That's what he says. It says a woman, a gune, basically a wife, came with an alabaster jar, an alabastron. It's basically a box made of alabaster. And by the way, how expensive do you think an alabaster box is? We'll talk about alabaster boxes in a minute, but a very expensive, literally, poteles, extremely expensive, literally the word is, this is a beautiful word. P-O-L-U-teles, poloteles, much telos. This is a normal word in Greek, but yet the author chose this word because this word means much telos. Okay, now a telos can be a payment for goods. That's one of its meanings. A polotelos can mean very expensive. But isn't it funny that Mark chose polotelos, much telos, talking about what is in her alabaster jar. Very interesting. I love this. Of muron, perfumed oil, made of pure nard, and this was made of nardos of nard, pure nard, and it says she sun tribo. She shattered the jar, the alabastron box made of alabaster, and katakeo poured down the perfume on his kafel, on his head. The perfume on his on his head. Now, okay, we got to talk about this because this is really, the picture here is nothing like our viewpoint. Our viewpoint is she had a little jar, right? And she took the jar and she poured it over his head. Nope, that's not the way this happens. The only way to get perfume out of an alabastron, any idea how to get perfume out of an alabastron? It's the word in Greek. It says broke, which is pretty good. Broke is pretty good, but sun tribo means shattered. An alabastron jar is usually a small box. The Greeks put stuff in boxes, especially things like this, not necessarily in jars or things. They didn't pour because nard doesn't pour, except for one time. When does nard pour very well?
It's hot.
Is that
When it's hot.
When it's hot, when it's warm. Okay, which means she did what with the alabastron box? She'd been holding it in her hand for a long time. She'd been warming it because she wanted it to flow. Because, see, nard is basically kind of lardish, so until you heat it up, and now it heats up pretty easily at 98.6. So she heat it up with her hand. Now to shatter it, okay, shattering it. It doesn't say that she hurt herself because when you shattered usually these things, any idea what you did with it? How you shattered it? Okay. If you had a piece of cloth, you'd put a piece of cloth around it and then you would crush it in your hand and the nard would come out, right? So she heated it in her hand and then she crushed it. Now, if you didn't have a piece of cloth, okay, how many pieces of cloth are just kind of wandering around in the ancient world? None. I mean, you can buy a piece of cloth everywhere in our world because cloth is cheap. How hard was it to make cloth? I mean, this is really difficult and expensive stuff, right? So she could have, I mean, she spent big money to buy an alabastron box with nard in it, right? So maybe she did have a cloth. But how would you normally do this? You would take your himation, your outer cloak or your inner cloak, Or a woman might take her headpiece, and you would wrap it around, and then you would crush it. I'm going to guess her headpiece. It says she was a wife, so if she was a wife, that meant she had a veil, a headpiece. So she probably put it around the box and crushed the box. When she crushed the box, now you take it and you squeeze out the nard, and that's how it comes down. The perfume fell on his head. Let's see. Crushed it with his fingers. I think it's okay. This is a polo telos. What is it a picture of? The Greeks would not miss this picture. What is this a picture of?
Burial?
Huh?
Burial?
Yeah, I'll give you.
Anointing?
Huh? An alabaster box filled with nard. What could an alabaster box filled with nard represent?
Body?
A body crushed, destroyed, to get whatever's inside out, right?
Essence.
The essence of in the box. This is such a, I mean, the beauty of this image is, remember Jesus said that he would be destroyed. Basically the word is anakrino. He would be killed but destroyed, right? Shattered. Broken, right? And so she takes the box, which could easily represent a body, and she crushes it, right? And yes, there is imagery of burial here, because this is burial preparation. And by the way, this is not necessarily Hebrew burial preparation. If this was Hebrew burial preparation, what would she have done? She would have crushed it and wrapped it around his head or around him, or wiped him with it, right? Because in Hebrew burial practice, they wrap the body, right? And then they put the spices on. In this case, she poured it directly. That is what? Greek. It's Greek. Anyway, with that, just look at the logos to tell us. Look at how these things fit together. Because, and look at the foreshadowing. Look back in Mark and see the things that are even foreshadowed to this point. Because Mark is just a wonderful writer, and this is a really powerful book. Father God, we thank you for your word. We pray you look after us this week. In your name we pray. Amen.
Are you going to put the